I'm Sari Kimball, and I've done just about everything in the food industry. I have helped hundreds of packaged food business entrepreneurs, and now I want to help you make your delicious dream a reality. Whether you want to be successful at farmers markets, online, or wholesale onto store shelves, food business success is your secret ingredient. I will show you how to avoid an expensive hobby and instead run a profitable food business. Now let's jump in. Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. Glad to have you here with me today. So I'm going to launch into my interview with Rob Allen. He is a formidable industry guru, expert. Oh man, he's a wealth of knowledge. And we talk in this interview, he and I have talked a lot about like how important business foundations are to your success. And so I want to remind you about the sales tax workshop that is coming up on March 29th. And this is one of those pieces that it is not fun, it's not sexy, but we need to do it. So you want to be sure you get yourself registered for this free workshop. It's at foodbizsuccess.com/sales tax 2022. The link will be down in the show notes as well. But don't put this piece off. I'm seeing people overpaying, which is never fun, and underpaying. And we want to avoid those pains in our business later on. So get yourself registered for that workshop. That will be next Tuesday in just 1 week. And if you're listening to this after that workshop is live, you can still grab the replay. Just head over to that same link and grab that replay of that workshop. All right, here we go. On with the interview. Really excited to have our guest today, Rob Allen, on the show. And I feel like I've just been kind of assembling like Sari and friends here lately. So I'm excited to bring on friend, colleague, mentor, Rob Allen. And I don't really know how to describe to introduce you other than I will just say, I'll let you introduce yourself. But I will say Rob and I met at Whole Foods Market when we both worked there. And he joined the regional team and he and I worked closely on opening some stores. And you were always one of those, I'll be honest, it wasn't my best moment in life. I was struggling with life things as well as not loving my work, but you were always a bright spot in my day. So welcome, Rob.
Well, thank you, Sari. That's very generous of you. Opening stores is never a pretty thing, number one. But we got better at it, over time. Had a great time. Spent 6.5 years at Whole Foods, met lots of great people, both on the global and regional teams and store level. Left about 5 years ago to pursue some other things and I've switched, or I've had the opportunity, shall we say, to work in about 5 different industries in my life. So it all comes down to now, if you will. But no, it's fun. Whole Foods really kind of rounded out my love of food and getting back to people. I was in the M&A and VC world for a long time, and you can't really say you love people then. Always been a business geek, so it kind of helped with that.
I'm kind of the same way, right? Like I have all these past lives that then sort of all come together. But I think you were telling my group that you were our chef. I didn't think it.
I started my apprenticeships at 14 and burned out at a Michelin 2-star in Brussels, Belgium when I was 27. So was able to travel the world and work in a lot of great places. It was the olden days, shall we say, when your French pastry cream didn't come up too well and your pastry chef threw a wooden spoon at the back of your head. Right. Those were the days, guys. Those were the days.
Especially in Europe.
It was best of times, worst of times, but it was great. But I came back to the States and still wanted to be involved with food, but took a detour into some other companies more in the agronomic development world, specifically canola within Israel, Canada, and the United States. And so it took me on different business journeys in developing companies in all three places to develop non-food-based materials. So led me into everything from DARPA to federal government stuff. Super really fun. Super really fun. Not, but it really gave me appreciation for the other side of business. And then I took a time out. Probably around, we had done really well. Took a time out in 2010. Decided I wanted to get back to food and people, and that's what led me into Whole Foods. So pretty fun.
You're one of those guys that just like, you just always excel and exceed people's expectations, and you keep your calm and you're cool and you never. It's great.
Because I've lived through 4 children, and it's thankfully they're all young adults now, and all of them are just varied in their interests and their passions, and it's great to see kids really develop. And Jen and I both are just like, okay, well, we're almost empty nesters, and I've always had a calm demeanor outside. Inside the whole different thing, but raising kids,
you handle it well. You're a good example for all of us of maintaining your cool and solving problems. So first of all, I want to just point out or, share this with the listeners that I think one thing you do really well is, and Jen actually mentioned this. So I'll back up even further. So you met Jen at Whole Foods and you guys had a little love affair, which was super fun to watch. And then you ended up getting married, and she's at KE and she's a rock star over there. So it's kind of fun. You guys are still in the industry together.
It is fun,
but hopefully find some non-work things to talk about.
Oh, very much so. We're actually we're kicking the last vestige of children out. No, just kidding. They're going on to college, but we actually bought a piece of land west of Denver and Morrison, and we're building our forever home there. So we're both mountain kids. So it'll be fun. We still get to travel together once in a while, me for clients, her for KE. But we find lots of fun time. So.
Well, when I got to say hi to Jen in Las Vegas, when we were there for fancy food, she said something that I was like, yeah, you're totally right. That like, you are very good at continuing relationships and like picking them back up and like putting in the effort. And I think that's one thing in this industry that's super important. And so I admire that about you. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to strive to do that. So you reached out to me, I don't know, maybe a year or a little more ago.
About a couple years ago.
We've stayed in touch and then kind of reconnected again. And we've talked about doing some projects together and working with some clients. So, but tell me what you do now, because I think that's really interesting, and how you help packaged food businesses specifically.
Yeah, it's been a long, strange road, shall we say, and trip. But after I left Whole Foods, I went back into consulting, which was great, helping restaurant groups go into CPG, retail world, and also in my past life in the investment banking sector, it's really turned into a lot of investment in CPG. One thing led to another, and about 4 years ago, through mutual friend, I got connected with 2 Mark Cuban companies at the time. And so steadily for the last 3.5 years, I've worked with 1 to 2 Cuban companies and Shark Tank companies, aside from that, a year, on different projects, whether it be from initial stage development, meaning they've got a great product, they've got an idea, they've got a dream, and they'll get investment. And what do we do now? It's everything from co-packing to everything else. And so I've really, my focus, as you know, Sarah, the last 3 years is evening the playing field, if you will, for vendors. I saw a real dearth of information and knowledge. You can have the best product in the world. You can have the best retail partner, whether it's Whole Foods, Albertsons, whatever, but you will die a death of a thousand cuts unless you understand the distribution and the placement aspects. I've got enough operational background to be able to help on that aspect as well, whether it's co-packing, own manufacturing, things like that. But also know that you've got to pay the piper on every piece of, and some of it's worth it, some of it's not. So really concentrate on that middle side for the last few years, which has been great. It's I primarily work with a company called Nuts and More out of Rhode Island. They're considered one of the top 10 investments made by Cuban in the CPG world. Pete and his group are just fantastic. So I've helped them navigate the retail world. They were in other channels, Amazon, Instacart, through their website, and they were doing nutrition stores, things like that. And then they wanted to break into retail. And so we navigated that through greater technology and a real keen eye, a skeptic eye to, it's not about opening all the doors in the world. It's about strategically opening the doors.
Right, the right doors.
And the right doors in where your product fits. If you're a premium product, do you want to be in a sub-premium retailer just to get 1,000 doors open? Not really. You're not going to stay there. Right. So it's really, it's been really fun. And then I'll get other projects thrown to me that I work on as well that are, some are, danger, lots of fire around, which is fun. I've kind of quit doing that because it tests my patience, shall we say. But it's awfully fun. Again, I'm a geek for this. I love seeing entrepreneurs go into it because I've been there. Why don't I do it anymore? I'm gray, and I love doing what I do. I love helping people. But it's a real cutout. And another thing, working on and off with my wife, which is awesome, which we have both at Whole Foods and elsewhere. But you get I've really dug into the distribution relationships the last year and a half. The good, bad, and the ugly, and how to manage that.
I want to talk about that more too. I don't know. I mean, maybe I built this up in my head, but the way I think about it is like Mark Cuban invests with a food brand on Shark Tank. And then like after the show stops taping, he's like, okay, now you need to work with Rob. Call Rob.
No, they actually, that's funny because all due respect to all the guys on Shark Tank and girls, Cuban has Cuban companies and they have a special CPG unit in there and really bright folks, but getting into the minutia and the detailed aspects, that's what's great working with a company like Nuts and More and Pete Farah, is that he says, okay, let's dig deeper. Let's find out the whys. Lots of examples of whys, but going deeper with a company that's pretty established, but is still breaking into retail over the last 2 years. Opened up 2,000 doors last year. This year, the goal is only 200 to 300. And a lot of those are independent. So that's a whole nother story on a whole nother time. But it's really shifting strategy from, okay, let's get some of the big kids, let's get some of the medium players, and go from there. But it's shifting the promotional strategy, your digital strategy, everything else. Yeah.
So you came and talked with, I brought my client and 11 clients out to Fancy Food, invited them out. And I wanted
By the way, that was great.
It was so fun.
Great group.
Yeah. I wanted to give them some extra value, really bring them together and offer them something you can't just get from walking a show. So you were out there and I asked you to come speak with the group and we pulled up some benches outside. It was perfect weather. And you just kind of shared, some of your gems. You're dropping some, some wisdom, like the microphone.
I won't use the gems I like, but let's just say the middle ground. It's really knowing yourself as an entrepreneur. It's knowing your brand and being real about where you want to go. I'm all for if the brand fits in farmers markets and we can do it throughout the country, region, state, whatever, do that. If you really have a heart to go into retail, get the information. And
Yeah.
it's hard to get the information.
Work with somebody who knows this.
Right. And, it's, as I told you before, part of that thing, and we talked about it before I presented to your group, was like, okay, do I give them the scared straight talk, and see the faces fall and the smiles go away real quickly? Yeah, it's a little bit like that sometimes. But then you kind of, you weed yourself out. It's not meant to scare you away from a dream or something. It's meant to be just very realistic about what you can anticipate. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't pretend to know it all. I love learning. I love this crazy industry we're in. But even as I told you about 3 weeks ago, I had a client kicked out of a DC.
Right.
No names, no anything. It was like, what? And they were doing really well, hitting minimums that are expected in DC's distribution centers for retail. They're, and it was news to us. So going down the rabbit hole of the whys had nothing to do with the brand. Actually, had nothing to do with the retailer.
Right.
Had everything to do with the distributor deciding to close a warehouse, move everything to another warehouse, and doing a SKU rationalization, and going, and somebody along the way just
making a decision and you're out.
A random decision. Now, that's not always the case, but we found out in this specific, we went deep on this, trust me. In this specific case, we found out that the normal protocols for discoing an item out of a DC were not followed. So, we can cry over spilled milk, but what it did for us as a brand was to go back and say, okay, how do we not do this again? How do we make sure that as a brand, we're making all the safety checks? We thought we were, but there were some internal things, that just happened. And
it's a great reminder that you're always going to have problems. It's just how do you respond to those problems, or do you spend a lot of time spinning out and, this shouldn't be happening and why us? And instead it's like, okay, well, we got to get to the bottom of it. We have to start solving the problem. And ultimately, like in that situation, you couldn't do anything to fix it. All you can do is learn from it. Like you can change it.
Yeah, very much so. We got to the fact really quickly. Okay. We went through the 3 things that we could do to try and reclaim that spot.
Right.
Especially this retailer. They have 65 stores. So it's not an inconsequential amount. And it was an independent, which we really liked.
Yeah.
But we even went to them and said, can you vouch for us? Well, once you get in another DC, you can pull, there's a whole nother thing. So at the end of the day, it was spilled milk. And we were like, okay, let's learn. Let's highly engage. And this had to do, Sari, with not only the distributors, the broker of record, the retailer, the category managers, CMs, the AMs, account managers. Trust me, we go deep.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all you can do is, I think just as a bigger metaphor of like how you can apply it to anything is like, okay, this is happening. Let's just get real with it. Like this is what's happening. And then what can we control? What's in our control? What's out of our control? What information do we need? And then, make some decisions, control what you can, release the rest, because you literally have zero control over it. So it does no good to worry and get mad, or, you don't want to like burn bridges either. So, and then kind of accept the lumps and learn from it and move on and, see what other outside solutions you can apply.
Which is great advice. It's just great advice. You want to take it professionally, but at the same time, you can't help but take it personally. What the, and that's,
it could be somebody, the market manager moves your booth, right? Like that happened. I'm a manager, so I have to do that sometimes. Right. So it could be, I'm getting kicked out of a distribution center to, Amazon shut me down, or I got moved at my farmer's market.
but it's accepting what is in front of you, but then looking for the externalities of the situation to make sure you're gaining more knowledge so it doesn't happen again, or you can foresee it. And that's a whole nother it's a whole nother thing that is empowered to vendors, I would say, over the last 7-8 months, with a couple companies out there that I've been working with. That's another subject, but that can forecast where the opportunities are, to use Whole Foods language, where are your opportunities. And so are we lagging in certain areas, or, where are we winning? Where are the opportunities? And a distributor is not going to give you that. IRI spins, you got to pay big money for that. There are all sorts of ways to get those externalities under your hat, so you don't face that same thing again.
Right. Right. Yeah. I have a little bit of innovation PTSD. Where are the opportunities? Innovate. Anyway.
Okay, I'll keep my mouth shut on that.
Yeah, we're gonna move on. Totally had
that's awesome.
PTSD there moment.
Get it.
So I want to talk about promotions. And one thing you told my group that was really it's like I knew it sort of intuitively, but I had never really been able to explain it. And I'd love for you to kind of talk about what to expect. I mean, I recognize that for some people listening, this is like a conversation beyond where they're at, but I also have a lot of listeners who are scaling their business, right? And wanting to go from, maybe 100K to, working on 500K to $1 million. So I think this is a really good conversation. And even if it's like, I'm just getting into my very first wholesale accounts, right? It doesn't really matter the scale, the theory still applies. So what I heard you say, and you can go more into this, is about like that first year of promotions and kind of what to expect there. So can you talk more about that?
Sure. In the retail world, you have what's called Freefill. And most every retailer will require some sort of Freefill. What that is 1 or 2 cases of each SKU that you have. You give it to them. It's a promotion. Right. So, let's just talk year 1, breaking into retail. Say we want to open 100 doors. You can expect that requirement of 1 to 2 cases of pre-fill. So whatever your COGS is for that, then, all the little death of 1,000 cuts of either shipping, last mile trucking, things like that. So you have to account for that your first year. I'll give you some ballparks, and each category is different. Categories meaning, are you perimeter of the store, bakery, deli, produce? They all have different meat, seafood. They have different requirements for slotting fees, things like that. Slotting can be free fill. Things like that. The center of the store is much more staid. It's, if it's peanut butter, hey, we want 2 cases of this per SKU. We're going to do this. We need you to run ads, meaning $1,000, $1,500 ads 4 times a year. Quarterly promotions, depending on the retailer, they can be 2 weeks, they can be 3 weeks or 4 weeks, where you're giving an OI, an off invoice, or an MCB, manufacturer chargeback, TPR, temporary price reduction, all sorts of acronyms that will blow your mind after a while.
We were laughing about how many acronyms this industry.
Yeah, between Whole Foods and the military, there are more acronyms than know what to do with. But the great thing about the promotions, the first year you're going to have to promote a lot. So be prepared for once a quarter, whether it's $2 off, $1 off, whatever. Retailers no longer match those promotions. There was a day, even up to 5-6 years ago, where if you put $1 off on a product and it's a $7 product, sometimes you'll get them to match that. That's
Right.
gone way. So you have to be really sensitive, especially that first year where your ad, we'll call the whole promotion ad spend, if you will, where your ad spend could be 28 to 30% when all the dollars, the nickels, pennies are counted after the year. So whereas you think your profit margins are healthy that first year, you really need to do some analysis. The second year that can go down. You're still required to do promotions 4 times a year. If you're in KHE or UNFI, you will submit promo plans usually by Q3, first of Q4 of a year for the following year. And you'll put in, hey, for Hannaford, we're going to do $2 OI February, May, September, December, something like that, whatever the category that's relevant for the seasons, for your shoulders, for your J curves, for introduction, things like that. So it's a lot of planning, and it's a lot of hopes and dreams, if you will, but it's planning. So the retailers and the distributors, hey, they check off and say, hey, is Sari's brand, are they doing all the right things? Are they on-time delivery? Are they getting the right promotions? Are their sales correct? Which is an ambiguous thing we can go in later, but where do they fall? In the scorecard of a brand. And so knowing the playing field, I guess, is a big thing. Knowing what the playing field looks like first is huge.
Right.
Most people say, well, okay, actually, great example. I was a smoke jumper thrown into the fire by an unnamed company to help another company that they invested in. And it was, the owners were amazing. I fell in love with them. Their product was very solid. Their co-packing was a little wonky, but they could sell anything, and they got into retailer A, B, C, which equaled about 1,000 doors, but they didn't have their back set first. They didn't have all their pricing strategies done. There's like, hey, we've got these sales, we've got these POs, let's just go. It's like, guys, hold on.
Right.
You don't even have
the
foundation, and I told it to your groups area. One of the most important pieces of paper that you can have is your spec sheet. Mm-hmm. Everything goes into that. It's everything from your GT1, your SKUs, and everything from your weights, your proper names, to how you ship, where you ship, and your pricing structure. Pricing is everything. So if retailer A wants this, are you truly going to be in that pricing structure? You're going to have to do a TPR or an EDLP. EDLP is everyday low price, right. Sort of promotions to get in there. So these are all considerations of setting the table to move forward, and really important, really important.
Yeah, I have a whole module in food business success just on all of these acronyms.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome.
The food industry overview, because you need to know the playing field. Mm-hmm. You need to kind of have at least a reference document. Mm-hmm. So many people listening to this podcast, they're in their home kitchen and they have this great idea, but they've never been in the food industry. So, what I guess, my biggest takeaway from all of that is like, I think that there's a rush when people have the product, right? And they just want to launch and get into as many stores as possible. And like, oh, let's go, turn it on. I have product. And to come back and make sure your foundation is really strong, because a lot of people don't, if they've never been in the industry or they don't understand it, they're just looking at okay, I got in the store. Here's my COGS. Here's my margin. Great. I'm like looking at it very simply, but I think what you kind of really drilled in to me is that you have to have the runway for that first year. And so you can't get into more stores than you really have the the budget for, right?
The capital
for to support, because
Yep.
your spend on trade spend and marketing and promotions is going to be so much higher that first year, right? Is that, did I break
Yeah,
it down?
and we're not even talking brokers yet. We're
Right.
not
We're
even
not talking about
talking
any of that.
certain things. Yes, to your point, the runway. There's a company I was working with last year. They were a 10 million plus company, but in their expansion, they didn't account for how much that first year of their expansion into the retail paradigm was. And so here they were in September saying, oops, we need about $750,000 runway, to make it to the end of the year. And so then you're going for lines of credit, you're going back to the investors for things.
Capital.
Yeah. And a capital raise before the holidays is never fun for anybody.
Yeah.
It happens, but in CPG land, not really. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I want to bring it down to just anybody going into wholesale. I mean, you may not have all of those things, right? Maybe you have free fills, maybe you don't, maybe you have slotting fees, maybe you don't. Like you said, with independent, smaller, sometimes you can get out, not have quite that burden as a traditional conventional retailer. But it doesn't really matter to me how big or small you are. Like, you still need to be able to, you need to put that in your forecast of like, I have to support this store, as whether it's 5 stores or 50 or 500.
Agreed.
I need to be able to support this store and be a really good partner, especially that first year, because I need to drive trial. I need to drive customer trial. How do we get customer trial? It's usually with sale signs. It might be with demos, right? It's going to be with employee education. So giving them samples and education pieces. It's going to be ads, coupons, all those things, right? Those are things that drive trial. I have to prove to the store, that retailer, that I am a really good partner and that I move product. And because that scorecard that you mentioned, right, at the end of the year. So your marketing, promote, and I want to talk actually about those terms, but like that support of each of your wholesale accounts is really crucial to be realistic about it for the first year. And it's going to be much higher and then level off the second year.
Correct. Exactly right. Your second year is much different. It's not half, but it's still significant, where you're looking at new types of promotions. So we heard
you
this.
Still have to do the promotions, but
you still have to, but there are much more creative ways to do it. I'll use Publix as an example. So they have loyalty programs. Publix has 12.4 million people in their loyalty program. Our main broker that I work with, they have a side arm that provides digital platforms for digital coupons within the Publix forum. Now, that's a whole nother rabbit hole, but the digital platform for promotions, especially your second year, is really, really important, because you're going to dovetail off, and then you're going to strategically place digital coupons, whether it be paper or digital. Everything's going digital, into specific areas. So if we're having a slow time in Alabama, okay, let's flood the 15 stores in Alabama or 100 stores and those types of things. So it's really the balance, but it's also having if you're getting into it to be bought in 5 to 6 years, that's a very low percentage, of companies. And so having the long haul, we heard back in the Whole Foods days, it's really tough getting on the shelves. And we experienced both at regional and global level, but it's tougher staying on the shelves. That first 3 years in the retail industry is just tough, but once you make it and you do the right things along the way, you're setting yourself up in the brand for success. Then you can talk line extensions, you can talk all sorts of fun stuff, but it's really, it's still, what have you done for me lately? What's new?
Yeah.
and so after the first year, the second year, you're a solid brand. You're finding your way within, say, 75% of the stores that you're in with a retailer or something like that. Then you can go back to your distributor partner and the retailer during category reviews, which usually 2 times a year per retailer, and say, hey, this is what we're doing for this next year. Are you guys excited? Sweet. Here's, and so it's really, and this, Sari, this is a small industry we're in. Your reputation, your, how you do business it's amazing. I still run into people, from our Whole Foods days that are now in different areas in this world, and they're still
people
great
move
folks. Yeah.
Stores, they move retailers, they move, Whole Foods
everything.
to distribution, whatever. But
exactly.
To your skill about maintaining relationships, don't burn any bridges.
Don't. I mean, I think the great thing I like about this industry is that if you're out there and you're an SME, a subject matter expert, which I would never claim myself to be in this, but it's relational based. Hey, it's not just gleaning information. I'm truly altruistic about this, is that I believe we need to share the information so it can get to everybody. I mean, your point of you've got a section of your training just on the acronyms in retail. Who knew? I mean,
right.
I think it's awesome. So those little bits really help. And this is not like going into an electronics store selling a widget. If you've got a perishable product, that's a whole nother discussion,
sure.
Versus shelf stable, things like that. Frozen categories, we can go on for days on the shipping disparities, of the supply chain, and, where you're going to incur the cost more, where you have to anticipate it, all sorts of fun stuff like that.
I just kind of realized I'm going to call this podcast retail reality check with Rob. And because I don't necessarily want to deter people, and I don't think you do either.
No,
we just want to give people the reality so they can plan for it, make adjustments. And I thought you brought up a great point about self-awareness. Do I want to do that? Do I want to be that kind of business? Do I want to play this game? Because there are other ways to have a profitable, successful food business.
Exactly.
Right?
I cannot
lots
agree
of
more.
other channels. So we're just really talking about the reality of larger scale retail and what to expect if that's what you want to go to.
Yeah, there's, if to look at it in stages. Okay, you can go after the big kids, whether it be Target, Kroger, Whole Foods, things like that. But there's so many independents on a regional basis. They're just fantastic. Actually, last week at the UNFI show in Orlando, I'd never heard of them before. It's a Hickford, and it's an independent retailer, family-run retailer of 12 stores in Florida. Their flagship, what used to be one of the old Lucky stores, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
Great family, really cool, and they're just killing it. They're not part of infra, they're not, but there's so many ways to just go, hey, I've got a great product. You have a great store or level of stores. I think would make a good love match, and you'd be surprised how often that can get you in to your local 3-store chain, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Prove you can do it, and knowing the scalability. That's just from the home aspect, or if you're in a shared kitchen, things like that. Go in. It's still an entrepreneurial paradise to go into, I won't name any retailers, but some independents, and go, hey, I think we'd make a good pair. I had this guy. He's a buyer for this chain in seven-store chain in and around Chicago. I thought he was sooner kneecap me than shake my hand. He was a very intimidating individual, but really funny. Guy was awesome, and we talked for a while, and I said, okay, there's not going to be any funny business on shipping. He goes, give me the deals. Okay. Yes, sir. But it's that type of back and forth where,
Right.
listen,
You can
I don't
have
want to
those.
dissuade anybody from following their CPG dreams or their food dreams because it is a fun business. At the end of the day, please, we're talking food, we're talking people, and let's have fun with it. And
Yeah.
the majority of people that you meet that are other vendors or retailers still have, glossy eyes. It's awesome. That's what.
Yeah, but we're still dealing in food.
It's,
I used to say at Whole Foods all the time, like with my
yeah.
staff, like, we're not saving lives here, people. Like, we're selling great food.
Our saying in our house is,
up.
yeah, we're not saving baby whales on the beach. Let's just step back here.
We are in food. We're having fun, and let's not take it so seriously. Like, this is a really fun business, but I think having advisors, mentors, colleagues like myself, like you, can really help.
I agree.
In the fun factor.
Yeah, and where you inject your passion and your background, I think is just. That's why when you started some of the things a few years ago, I was like, hey, I need to reach out. And when we reconnected, I was like, yeah, you still have the same type of spark, back when we first met. And I was like, yeah, okay. That's, and it's, I can't tell you how important it is to have sometimes a cheerleader, sometimes a realist, and sometimes just, hey, this is the way it is, because it's really important through everybody's journey. And that it still gets me up every day. I love dealing with the entrepreneurial aspects, even when I'm in really tough situations for clients. And I've most likely probably been there before and can help out. If not, I'm the first guy to raise my hand and say, I have no idea, but I'll find out. And that's that intellectual curiosity has to be part of every phase of what you're doing. How can we do this? Do I know somebody, that can help me with this? And that's why
the who is really important, right? When you start trying to build the how bridge, find the who, find who else has done this, who helps people do this, right? Like, I don't need to figure all this out on my own. Let me go find the who to help me with the how. I think is super important.
Right.
I want to talk more about promotions because I think you could really help us understand. First of all, can you help define some of those different buckets? Because I tend to want to just call it marketing, but I know, for like general terms, but I know it really does get broken down, especially in the retail space. So can you help define some of the terms like trade spend, promotions, like how those differ from each other?
So trades, as a vendor, trade spend is exactly that. What you're going to spend to get ahead in a retailer. So your trade spend, say for year one, for promotions can be 15, 18%. Then on top of that, you've got another layer of promotions, which is part of the Freefill. So those are, that's where the first year gets really expensive. Second year, you're not going to have Freefill except in the extra doors you're opening and things like that. Promotions they can be interchangeable. Just depends on, trade spend usually goes to the retailer, and promotions go to the retailer through the distributor. But they're ad buys, meaning if you want to be in the flyer for Sprouts Market, you're going to buy that ad for X amount for 4 times a year, things like that. And they'll place a little a coupon book or some in different retailers coupons next to your product if you have it.
Right.
Those types of things. So that can all go into promotions and marketing. So again, you can see where they're interchangeable sometimes. Right. And it really depends on the context. So Whole Foods looks at trade spend and promotions differently than Kroger does. It's Yeah, that's too long.
That's what you need.
That's
somebody like you to help you figure it out. But maybe
yeah.
I kind of look at marketing, like, I mean, it is a general bucket, but there's like outside where you're marketing directly to your customer. Maybe it's social media ads. It could be other things versus trade spend, like you said, is direct with the retailer.
Is direct, usually pass through from the distributor to the retailer. And the, I'll put it nicely. The opportunity to do trade spend. So if you're doing Freefill, the money sways back, but there's a handling fee by the distributor for that privilege.
So it's a free product plus you pay for the privilege of giving
you're
free
welcome.
Product.
There you go. You're welcome. No, but the external marketing, whether it's be digital marketing, online social, things like that, that's a separate bucket. Right. Where it conflates a little bit is with the digital campaign for coupons, for driving sales. We can talk geo-targeting for a minute.
I want to talk about this because I know you've been getting into coupons and looking at digital space. So start talking a little bit about that.
So that's one of the ways the advertising is taken back to the vendor and has a little bit more control over it for your ad spend, whether it's going to be 12 cents a clip, 9 cents a clip. But digital couponing can happen on a broad base, or it can happen within a like loyalty club program, like I was talking about Publix before.
Sure.
More specific, there are companies out there that we've dealt with that will say we're having a problem in Alabama, okay, and we have 14 stores that are under par over a 6-month period. We want to really highlight it. There are geo-targeting aspects for digital coupons and loyalty programs. So when you walk in that store or within 100 feet of that store, digital coupons can pop up into your app and say, hey, and drive the customer there.
Right.
This will be $1 off, $2 off, something like that. So the clip rate is 9, 12, 14 cents or something like that if somebody clicks on it. But you've also got to have the product in stock. That's the biggest thing where it's like, oh, I got a coupon. Oh, it's not in stock. So it's really using both hands. You have to make sure with your distribution, your retailer, hey guys, we're going to be running this promo in these 14 stores in Alabama starting March 1st. We need to make sure that our top 3 SKUs are in there in order to support this, because this coupon is only good for 2 weeks or 4 weeks. We want to make sure we're in stock instead of out of stock. So it's really forecasting, but it really puts the power back in the vendor's hands. You can cut that off, say, hey, we only want to afford 10,000 clips. Okay. It stops there. So as soon as the 10,000 person, you can
control over how frequently and how much and
exactly. We want to go to the dark side of OI stuff, off invoice, where a retailer distributor can
don't do it. Just stay away if you can.
Don't do it. You want to track as much as possible, obviously, and so that's a whole discussion. It really is dependent on where you are with the distributor, where you are with the retailer. And so it's not just we opening doors. It's really, okay, we opened those 1,000 doors. Is that close to what we thought it would cost us? And if not, where are we going? What do we need? Do we need some buffer? Are we not filling, shelves? Is it just the free fill? Like there's for Nuts and More, we had a retailer, very large retailer, rolling us out by divisions. Well, one division, let's just say, is not compatible to all. So we were in schematics, we were in, their order guides, everything else. And once the free fill hit, the reorder rate just dropped off like, a rock. So we're like, okay, guys, how can we post this up. So we worked with a distributor, we worked sort of with the retailer, but mainly with our broker at the point. Said, okay, guys, we're going to do another infusion of coupons, promos, things like that. You need to get the stores to put it back in their planogram, order to the order guide, things like that. So yeah, all sorts of fun stuff you can do, but really there are strategies to take, and it's only been the last year and a half, 2 years, where the vendor strategies are getting stronger, I think,
Right.
And to the point we've talked about before, get as even a playing field as possible. That's what you want to try and do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the industry does not necessarily favor the manufacturer, the vendor, the brand. So
No.
you really have to be vigilant in all aspects. And I think if anybody, we won't get into distribution on this, that's a whole other podcast, but I would say, again, self-awareness and like a reality check that, like, if you're going into distribution, if you're going to be working with retailers, larger retailers, like, you need to have really good record keeping, really good tracking mechanisms in place. Like, don't just be like, woohoo, we're in a distributor, like, because they have chargebacks, they have all these fees, and you got to check them each month. I mean, you have to wear this whole other hat, and maybe you're not the best one equipped for it. So maybe you need to bring on help.
You know what, Sherry, that's that brings up a really excellent point. I think you know her. A very good friend. She had a company in Colorado. I think she was in 4,000 doors nationwide, and she didn't control the middle of the chargebacks of all the different nicks and cuts you can get every invoice. You can say, oh, I submitted this PO. Well, your invoice comes back and it's got $5 on it when it should be 1,000. You're like, what is going on here? And unfortunately, she lost her company because she didn't know this. Well, she spent the last 10 years just making it back, evening the playing field by saying, hey guys, this is what you need to look for. She's inspiring to me. Always is. And she learned, and then she moved forward. And unfortunately, it's not a, wayward case. It happens every day.
Right.
Even with the large companies, if you don't have somebody with a really good acumen for keeping, it's not just financial, it's reading the lines, it's reading the invoices, being able to look at deductions. Is that what we agreed to? Because you're going to go into contractual agreements with KE, with UNFI on different arrangements. And if you don't have that already set up through SBS programs, things like that, that will help you with that, it's a big job. In the 500,000 to $5 million annual range, it can eat you alive. Especially that first and second year in retail. So
the time to set it up is at, $50K, set the systems up early so that they're there, and then you can scale with your systems. And, you might need to change the systems a little bit to be more efficient, but like, at the very least, starting the practice early of really watching those invoices, wearing that hat of like, what role would that be? Like, I feel like it's like data forensics.
There are a couple outfits out there that actually will go out and they'll do a 2-year forensic study of your POs, invoices, and any agreements you have.
Wow.
And they will recoup. It's kind of like Frank Azar, he'll take a big portion of the money he gets, but, at least you can correct the records. You don't want to get to that point. You don't want to have to hire forensics on it. So you want a controller or comptroller to be able to run that for you. And it's really setting yourself up for success. Hey, if I like making candy canes and that's my passion, but I have no financial literacy other than I can balance my checkbook, but this is my dream, know your role, know your roles. And it's not I know my role. Can I go in and be a CPA? No. Um, did I spend a lot of years where I played an attorney on TV? Sure. If you will. I'm just kidding. I didn't, but I was in the contractual aspects in multiple industries, and that's how I broke into actually with some of the companies I'm with now, by looking at their regional distribution agreements and saying, you guys didn't really agree to this, did you? Because you did. And it's really, it's either getting out of the contracts or negotiating new things.
Yeah.
And, I always defer to an attorney, but I can look for the buzzwords within the CPG retail distributor world that, really help. And actually, I talked with one of your clients and said, okay, you need to go back, and because they asked me, and I said, you need to go back and look at your agreement, and then, go from there. Because
Right.
I'm always willing to help. Because again, I think from the altruistic side, if we can make it easier altogether, awesome. Let's
Right.
go.
Yeah.
We'll have to make a living, but it's still, I think it makes it better.
Love it. Well, to kind of wrap up, I think what we're both saying here is know what you're getting into, go in with your eyes wide open, understand the playing field, get help. Like, don't try to do this all on your own if you've never been in this industry, and just book that into part of your startup. Your cost for scaling up is working with somebody like yourself and other consultants out there that you don't have to. I know that can be a big line item on your budget, but if you want to do it right and set yourself up from the start.
I mean, and that's why, that's not to finalize on this point, but that's why I asked you, should I give a scared straight talk? Because I go back to the 80s, 90s, scared straight, kept me out of jail. But anyway, they used to have this program called Scared Straight. And, all these kids go in and get the hell scared out of them, and, I want to give that talk. It's a 10 to 15-minute talk, but then, hey, you know what? It's a beautiful bluebird day sky. Let's look at it. Let's look at be honest on the pros and cons. That's
just all. Be self-aware, be realistic, have all these pieces, like know what you're getting yourself into, especially in the retail space, because it's a whole other animal for sure. So you are always so generous with your time, and I really appreciate that about you, Rob, and very giving. I do want to bring you in for our Food Business Success for a VIP call at some point. So if you guys are in the program, that's a great place where people get to ask you questions, which will be great.
I don't answer questions. No, just kidding.
Like I said, awesome. You are always very generous with your words and your time. So thank you. If people want to kind of find you, is the best place LinkedIn to connect to you?
LinkedIn, or just directly through you. It'd be great to all be in the hood together on this. Again, I only work with 3 to 4 clients at a time, which is great. But as Sari said, I'm always willing to answer questions, and whatever, because I really believe in, especially your group. They're just so engaged, and it's just awesome, know. So I appreciate it.
Reminds you of the I remember why I got into food.
I'll carry the gray hair for all of us. So that's good.
I love it.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Rob. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, Sari.
Oh my gosh, you guys, that was so fun. So good. Rob is just a wealth of knowledge. He's so generous with his time and his industry knowledge and connections. And it's so important that you all are expanding your world of people. This industry, people are successful by their relationships with others. And so by you getting to know me, and if you want to come inside Food Business Success and become a member or become a one-on-one client, you automatically get access to more people like Rob. It opens up your world of connection and relationships by your connection with me. And so that is just so important as I think about who succeeds and who succeeds faster in this industry. So I hope you really got a lot out of that. And I'm just going to leave it here. So until next time, have an amazing week. Are you ready to start that delicious idea that you make in your home kitchen or grow your existing packaged food business and take it to the next level? The most successful food business entrepreneurs have support, guidance, focus, and accountability to help them make it happen quickly without wasting time or money. Plus, I think starting your packaged food business should actually be fun. Food business success is your secret ingredient to creating your food business dream. Please don't go this alone. Check out the private free Food Business Success Facebook group to connect with other foodpreneurs, get your questions answered quickly, share your wins, and receive special training and tools I only share inside the private community. Just search for Food Business Success on Facebook or get the link in the show notes. Curious about how Food Business Success can help you? Head over to foodbizsuccess.com and fill out the application to see if you're a great fit for the program. Together, let's make your food business dream a reality.